There we go. All right, we are live. Guys, this is the Difference Makers podcast. My name is Justin Tamani. I'll be your host today. Today we have with us Michele Letendre.
Yes.
Did I get it? It's I always mess up names and I'm trying not to. And if you've ever watched one of these or listened to one of these, like I'm doing my best. But
You did great.
Michelle's a 5-time CrossFit Games athlete and the sixth. Did I mess it up?
Six.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
6-time
it's okay.
CrossFit Games athlete.
2011 is a forgotten year.
Man, I thought I did my research properly. Okay, I messed it up. And the leader of the Deka Comp crew, the head coach and leader behind Deka Comp. So, Michele, thank you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
So, talk to me about that transition quickly from CrossFit Games athlete. You were with Deka, but the Deka gym.
Yes.
And then started Deka Comp after you retired, and you started to take on some elite athletes at that time, right?
Right. So I knew that so my last year was 2016, but I knew that in 2015 that I was going to stop in 2016. Initially, I was going to stop in 2015, but I decided to give it another go. And in that year was kind of the year where Deka Comp was kind of born, where I was kind of thinking about where I wanted to go. I didn't want to leave CrossFit. I didn't want to leave the competition scene specifically. Funny enough, like in 2015, we had the invitational, right? CrossFit used to have the invitational, where they would invite the top athletes at the games based on their country and their geographical location, and we would all compete on a team. And one year I was the coach, and it just woke something up in me that I realized that I really wanted to sit in that seat. And so once I got the taste of what it was to be a coach in a high competition level, I just knew that that was the right role for me. You know, as an athlete, I had talent, I had work ethic, but I knew that I wasn't going to go much further in my career. I was tired. I was kind of broken down a little bit. I was looking to do something new and different. So I just, everything just kind of ended on the right note, that I felt like I had found what I was my next step. So when I was competing in 2016, I was just kind of building up the idea of what Deka Comp would be. But I have to thank the ex-owner of Deka Gym for that, because he believed in that project more than I did. You know, he once said to me that I would be doing this full time one day, and I laughed in his face, and I was like, yeah, right. And
was that while you're still competing, or was that like after?
It was like while I was kind of still competing, and we were starting to think about it. And then the first year of me coaching was 2017, the season of 2017.
Okay.
That was the year that he told me that you'll see it's going to get big enough that you're going to be doing this full time, because at that time I was, I was coaching at the gym and I was writing programming, and, I was enjoying it. And Patrick had decided to kind of entrust me with his 2017 season. And to be honest, that was really intimidating. But then it just kind of like organically became my career. So that's how I transitioned. I was already over the athlete thing, and I had already planned the coaching thing. And basically, for personal reasons, to bridge the gap a little bit, because I was well aware that there could have been a, post competition depression, and there could have been a moment of questioning. Like, it's a real thing with athletes. So to kind of mitigate that personally, I decided to enroll in Olympic weightlifting. So I had my personal competition in a different sport, and then I invested myself professionally as a coach. So I think I set up those pieces for myself quite well, that the transition was really easy.
It seems like you put a lot of thought into that transition. It wasn't like just an abrupt
it was
thing.
Thoughtful, but more opportunistic.
Yeah.
When my Olympic weightlifting coach kind of talked to me about the fact that my lifts were national level and I can get the elite status in Quebec,
Mm-hmm.
and that would help me financially. I was like, well, it's kind of a no-brainer. And then I felt like it was a good opportunity to also keep my competitive outlet. So it was thought out. Like I knew I had to prepare a transition, but the Olympic weightlifting component was kind of like a happy surprise.
Have you ever thought about like some of the CrossFitters and some of the numbers they're putting up and how that compares, especially on the women's side?
The female weightlifters are very strong, but the weight category kind of trumps it a little bit.
Yeah.
But I have to say that like if we look at Maude Charon, who was she was a CrossFit competitor before she turned a gold medalist Olympic weightlifter at
Yeah.
the Olympics.
Yeah.
You can tell that the women have a lot of potential to transfer over into weightlifting. But it's
Yeah.
not just the women. Like just recently, what's his name from Hustle?
Craig
Uh,
Ritchie.
yeah, he just medaled as well in a national tournament, in a national meet.
Yeah.
So I think Olympic weightlifters are really, really good at lifting weights. And I have to say that diving into the world of Olympic weightlifting and seeing the systems that are used to train athletes there, I think that good coaches in Olympic weightlifting should kind of look at what the CrossFit athletes are doing and see how they can change their training a little bit, because the amount of just sheer like volume of strength work that is varied could really help mentally the Olympic weightlifting athletes, but also physically. So there are a lot of overused things in Olympic weightlifting that I think could be avoided if people did a little bit more CrossFit style, not CrossFit
Yeah.
style workouts. And I was lucky enough that I had an Olympic lifting coach that was like super on top of it, and he made sure that CrossFit was still part of my training so that I can stay kind of like normal and not just always
Yeah.
lifting. And
I think when I made that little bit of a transition as well to
yeah, I
weightlifting,
did.
that I had the same thing where I'm like, I gotta do some sort of CrossFit or something, like I wasn't just snatch, clean and jerk,
Yeah.
squat to prepare. I was still building in some of the things I would normally do.
Yeah.
And even like just the time frames of like doing EMOMs and things like that. And I use that to, like I said, keep me sane and not be so
Yeah.
monotonous in the gym.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Olympic weightlifting is it's a beautiful, beautiful sport because it just, to me, the Olympic weightlifters we see on those international platforms,
Mhm.
they represent the epitome of being patient. Like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can't be anything else because you're doing the same thing all the time. So there has to be there's a level of perfection and focus, and it's really something. It's really something. The same way I'm into triathlon now, and I'm watching a lot of Ironman triathletes and trying to understand how they train, and their level of mental fortitude is just, because CrossFit's like an easy sport to train in because you're constantly varied,
Yeah.
functional movements. You're just always fed with different things. Part of the difficulty of the sport of CrossFit is that there's so much, but that's also part of the fun. And then when you're doing things like Olympic weightlifting or like marathon running or like Ironman distance triathlon, you're literally focusing all your time and efforts on like two lifts or three disciplines or one discipline. Like it's something
Yeah.
else.
You're right. And that's, I think, why so many people are drawn to the idea of CrossFit and just going to the gym. It's because of that constant change.
Yeah, it's so important. You get addicted to it though.
Oh, totally do.
Like,
I've had a lot of athletes that I coach that are like, yeah, I want to try Olympic weightlifting, and they can't do more than like an 8 to 12 week cycle because they're just like, I can't come to the gym every day and just do these three to, it's not just three things, but it's
no,
primarily that.
but yeah, it's very hard. I found it. I didn't enjoy. I did enjoy the training at first because when I was done competing in CrossFit, I was just enjoying the fact that I can do whatever I wanted. So
Yeah.
that was really fun. But what I didn't enjoy about Olympic lifting was the competing. I loved competing in CrossFit, And I love training in CrossFit, but the competing in Olympic weightlifting is just not for me.
It's very different.
Oh
And
yeah.
then especially if you have to factor in like weight cutting and things like
Oh yeah.
that.
So hard.
Like
So hard.
I missed weight on one of my first meets,
Oh no.
but I was down enough where like I was literally skipping with 3 jackets on in the hallway to
Oh my
sweat
God.
it out, and I may or may not have had to weigh in pretty much naked. But I
Um,
made weight.
you made the weight.
I made the weight,
Oh
but
my
I
God.
was like running around like an idiot for like
How
an
focused
hour.
were you after?
Oh, the next time I went up a weight class and I was 3 kilos under.
Mm,
So I was like,
yeah.
it
It's
wasn't the
hard.
yeah,
Weight sports is hard.
yeah. Especially coming from CrossFit where you can just kind of do whatever you want.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, but I think like everything in life, there are pros and there are cons, and unfortunately, Olympic weightlifting, the weight cutting thing was just like it. I can see how people can fall into eating disorders with that kind of sport, and exposing to that, like the strategies for weight cuts, like it can get really unhealthy. It's like the
Yeah.
dark side of the sport. So like I would never, I was at like I'm not like I wasn't planning on making, my goal was to make worlds and I never made it, but I wasn't
Mhm.
gonna starve myself to do it. In fact, I did do a special diet to maintain calories but cut weight, but I had some side effects.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm never gonna do this again.
No. And then where was it easy to maintain training at that level and potentially like kind of doing a new sport for yourself while at that same time taking on somebody like Patrick Vellner, who is, a
Um,
very high performing athlete?
yeah, but Patrick has always been remote.
Yeah.
So Patrick's, I mean, in terms of time, it's really more time on the computer and like texting and calling and stuff like that. So um, I had time to do my training, but I definitely didn't take it that seriously. And if I did, I guess I wouldn't have been able to take on coaching as seriously as I did.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be able to compete at a high level and coach as well. Like people ask me all the time if I would ever go back to masters athlete, and they forget that I coach three athletes of high level. One of them is a potential games athletes and two already are. Plus I have the business to run, and I literally would compete at the same time as my athletes. Like it's not reasonable, but let's just say theoretically
Yeah.
that that I could compete at something high level while I was coaching. I don't think it would be a possibility.
No.
I don't think I would enjoy training, and I don't think I would enjoy coaching. So doing right now the triathlon thing is just a perfect fit because it's outside of my work. It's not CrossFit. It's CrossFit-y. I can
Mhm.
still do CrossFit, but it's outside of my realm of work where I can just kind of turn off my brain and do it for fun, but still do good because it's a new sport. So I'm still PRing, I'm still progressing, I'm learning. And whatever I'm learning in my triathlon, I can really bring it to my athletes in terms of training the same way I did with Olympic weightlifting. So I do the sport for myself, but I also have a little window that I open for ideas and like new things that I want to try and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
but to answer your question, no, I don't think I could be able to do the high level competing and coaching. It doesn't work.
Yeah. With some of the things that you've brought over from triathlon, do you find that, or have you been able to implement it for long enough so that you can see the results from your athletes yet? Or is it something new that
Yeah,
you're starting to build in?
yeah, we talked about this after WODProof, I think.
I think so.
Um, I've done a lot of things. Like I used to swim when I was young, and there was a way that our coaches, and I played water polo, and there was a way that our coaches build swimming that was very, very clear. It was like a pyramid. We swam like crazy when we at the beginning of the season, and then we played more. That's like general sport. It's the way it works.
Yeah.
Then I did some Olympic weightlifting here and there, and I saw how they prepared. And but one of the key things about triathlon is that they dose volume and peaking kind of differently. And it kind of does full circle because I researched a lot on conjugate system as well. And it all comes down to the 80-20 idea. And so in triathlon and specifically endurance sports, not only triathlon, but they work 80% volume and 20% intensity, more or less, depending on where we are in the season and stuff. And so when I was doing it, I figured, man, this is such a good idea because in conjugate, it kind of works like that. And that avoids like linear progressions.
Mm-hmm.
They have this idea of constant volume versus intensity, which can avoid some cycles and some time off and this and that. So I just decided to give it a shot last year with Pat. And I've always tried things with Pat. Pat's always been great. Like I literally tell him at the beginning of the year, I'm like, Pat, I have an idea for your training this year. Like, do you want to try it? You know, and he's always really open to that. So we decided to try the 80-20 for the 2021 games this past summer.
Yep.
And so I think that Pat pulled up really well. I mean, he's aging, but his intensity was still very high. He was dealing with a little bit of nagging injuries here or there, but nothing crazy like most athletes like me when I was competing and whatever. But the mental capacity for him to actually do the work is much, much better. Like on low intensity days, it takes a lot of pressure off of his shoulders and he just does the work the way it's written in a zone 2, zone 3. And it's just, he really likes it. So because he really likes it, I think that he navigates the training really well. And I also put Ellie on that. And for Ellie, it was more like pulling her back. For Pat, I basically gave him a little bit more volume, but explained to him the volume is not going to be super crazy intense.
Yeah.
There's only 2 days, you know, that you're really going to be expected to go intense, but the rest is just about accumulating reps, getting your tendons and muscles ready for high intensity. And for Ellie, it was kind of the opposite, where the high volume days were what she was used to, but I had to ask her to kind of go a little bit slower so that when she was doing the higher intensity days, they were really focused and prepared for. So it turned out really well. I think everyone was really ready. I've done a couple of tweaks here and there to kind of avoid too much contrast.
Mm-hmm.
So from the high intensity to the low intensity days, sometimes there was a tad too much contrast. And what that means is that the athletes on the high intensity days didn't feel like they can push, like they weren't warmed up for that kind of intensity.
Yeah.
So I've balanced it out. So maybe it's going to be like a 75-25 now. But that's the idea now. Since doing endurance sports, that's the biggest lesson I've learned, to kind of manage intensity levels and also increase work capacity. So it's been great. Like no adverse effects so far. And I'm looking forward to see how that we're going to see Freya maybe qualify for her first games. And if she makes it with that system, it's going to be the winning system.
I'm saying you're giving away all the secrets right now.
Hey man, it's free. How do you say that? What's that word? That it's open source.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It definitely is. And I mean, when we talked about this after WODProof, I spend a little bit of time with Pat. I get to see him actually train. I probably see him train more than you get to see him train.
That is true. That is very true.
And yeah, I've seen his like volume days. I've seen his intensity days, and it really made me think about how I approach coaching and how I approach programming for my athletes.
Yeah, it's scary for the athletes. I think a lot of athletes, and I've had this discussion, especially with Ellie and Freya, and it's very scary for them to slow down on purpose.
What's up guys, Justin here. I'm really sorry to interrupt the show, but we're here to talk about something special. This is to talk about Bionic. Bionic is a first of its kind AI-based motion tracking mobility test that's designed to show you what your body is really doing. We've designed 7 unique tests that show you your range of motion for different joints throughout your entire body and how they work together. Once you're done the test, you'll be given a body map score, which breaks down your entire body and their different range of motion. From there, the WODProof app will also design a mobility program specifically tailored to your needs and the things you want to improve. I can't wait for you guys to try out the test. Go download the WODProof app today, start your free 7-day trial, and try Bionic today. All right, guys, back to the show.
Yeah.
And I get it. But if I were to do my career again, I think that if my coach told me that, like, hey, we're going to do some days where it's really just about, it's a CrossFit workout. There's like 150 reps of everything, but you just got to go slow and get the work done. I think I would have had I would have had less strain on myself. Like those intensity days when you're tired, they get to you.
Yeah.
So doing the high volume stuff, you can kind of, you don't get in your head so much. You're not getting into this whirlwind of negative emotion, because it's going slow is part of the process. So I kind of wish I would have had that experience. And I do it now. Like when I do the triathlon stuff, most of my training is pretty easy, and the intense days, like I feel it. I give it everything I have, and I'm tired the next day, but I'm not completely wrecked the way I used to be.
I did a workout last week, and I went in with this mentality. It was like something long lines of 75 wall balls, 50 toes to bar, 75 wall balls, just for time. But I haven't done wall balls in 3 months because of my knee.
Oh yeah.
And that's 150 wall balls. And that to me is like a daunting number, especially because I haven't done them.
Yeah.
But I was like, I just went with that approach. I'm like, I'm just going to break it up. I'm going to move through it. The stuff I could push on, I pushed on. And I was like, mentally leaving that workout now and the way I approached it versus 4 years ago when I was competing.
Yeah.
I left that in very, very different state. I was in a much better mental state. And I also had, I would have put pressure on myself to perform and to win the workout or beat the class, like whatever it was. And like, I still put up a time that I probably would have been better on than when I was competing, just simply because of the approach and the calmness to it.
Yeah.
And it made a big difference.
It does. And if I were to give any piece of advice to anyone listening that has let's say a movement weakness, not a systems weakness, not so much a strength weakness, although it does work, but when you have a specific movement weakness, the best way to practice it is low intensity, just to get reps in, and just to and do it in a very self-compassionate way. And when you do that, like all of a sudden the pressure is off and you're just enjoying the movement. And like you said, the low intensity takes off pressure, but there's also the idea, like one thing I noticed when I retired was wall balls is probably one of my favorite movements now. And when I was competing, I hated it. But now I love it because it's so low impact and it's so cyclical and it's so easy to break up and it's so easy to strategize. But back then it was just so hard, like I couldn't do 150 unbroken and I sucked and this and that. And then all of a sudden, like you said, like you do things better than, it's not to say that everyone that just takes off the pressure is going to go to the games, but when you want to practice, because in our sport, this is also something that doesn't exist, like practice. When you want to practice something, what you have to do is take the components, develop the musculature around it, develop the movement pattern, develop the endurance, but also develop the just overall exposure to the movement. And you do that just by doing reps without pressure.
Yeah.
So
some of my favorite pieces to write right now are just like, not for time pieces.
Yeah.
Like 5 rounds, not for time, just get it done.
Patrick, Ellie, and Freya have not for time pieces, they have at least 6 sessions, like 6 pieces like that in their week, where it's just not for time. And it's like a Metcon, but it's not for time. And Pat's told me that he appreciated it, so I'm going to keep doing it.
And with all this being said, I think that 2021 games was the fittest I've ever seen Pat.
I agree with that. I really do. I think I'd never seen him so good. Like his energy was good. His mindset was good. Like he just looked happy. It was great.
Yeah.
Good to see him compete.
And even out on the games floor, like the workouts where he should have done well and he should have won, he went out there and executed on all those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Pat had a pretty clean run this year. I mean, aside from the swim and the handstand walking, he had a clean run. Like it was a very good competition. It's for sure like this year is going to change. Like we're keeping the same system, but like this year, Pat is swimming like 3 times a week. But I think honestly, although it's a disappointing, I don't like saying disappointing because I can't be disappointed with Patrick finishing second. Like I can't be disappointed with that. But like if the goal is to win, it is a disappointing one. But I do think that Pat is the kind of person that doesn't take that as an insult to who he is. You know, Pat is an independent and very confident person. So if anyone can just look at that and just brush it off his shoulder is Patrick. So I'm not nervous. I wasn't nervous for that finish for Pat, but I know that he's gunning for that spot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing and one person we keep mentioning, but I don't think most people know who she is Freya.
Yeah.
So you keep saying Freya, and people are probably listening and being like, I don't know what's going on right now. So tell us a little bit about Freya. Freya is just competed at WODProof in the elite division.
Yeah.
So it's Freya Moosberg?
Moosbrugger. There's an R before the U. Like in WODProof, they called her Moosburger, but it's Moosbrugger. And she is, so Freya, I found Freya because Deka Comp has a competition club called the Deka Comp, the Deka Competition Club.
Yeah.
And we started this club to help people get access to hands-on coaching, but it's virtual. It's a virtual club. It's the idea of a triathlon club, but we wanted to, extend it to CrossFitters. And we have an application for it just to make sure that athletes that are applying for the club have the acquired experience. Mm-hmm. And when I was looking through the applications, I saw Freya's name and I saw her answers and her stats. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, who's this? And then, because she said she completed at the Atlas Games and she got 12th, I think.
Yeah, I have 12th at Atlas.
I was like, whoa. Okay, I'm gonna go look into her, and I creeped her on social media and looked at her results in the Open, and I was like, man, this girl's got some good potential, and she's 19 years old. Like she's 20 now, but when I found her, she was 19 years old, and I was just, I'm gonna reach out and see if she's open to having some personalized coaching. And she jumped at the opportunity, and I jumped at the opportunity, and we've been working together for, I'd say about like 6-7 months, something like that. And she's just got a ton of potential, and she's got a fun attitude, and she's very, very gifted and very good all around. She has a background in Highland dancing. So if you're not Canadian, you might not know if this is Canadian or Irish or Scottish.
Yeah.
She has a background in Highland dancing, and she's got a beautiful attitude, very open to learning, very ready, but also very humble, and she's just great. So this past weekend was the first time I actually got to see her compete in person, and it was actually her first ever, I said this past weekend, but this past month of January.
Yeah.
Time,
Doesn't it feel like it just happened? I feel like we're just leaving.
But she was competing for her first live competition at WODProof in the elite division.
That to me is the most outstanding thing.
Crazy. And she qualified. She won the qualifier. She won the online qualifier.
Oh, that I didn't know.
I think she won. She either won or got second, but she is a force. So, this year, the goal is to really test it and see. But there's no doubt in my mind that Freya is the next thing to come out of Canada.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just for a strong female, like a newer generation. I don't want to insult any female Canadians out there because they're all very strong. Like all of them are competing, and they're like, Canada is well represented. But I think she's the new generation female athlete coming to the CrossFit Games. And I mean, fingers crossed, but I do believe that she will be qualifying, if not this year, next year for sure.
Yeah. I mean, a couple quick stats. She was 8th in Canada in the Open 2021. So 8th overall in the Open. 12th at Atlas, which was the semifinal qualifier.
Yeah.
And then just at WODProof, she was 10th, right behind Emily Rolfe. So Emily was 19th, another Canadian. Yeah. And then Freya was 10th. So, I mean, for her first live in-person competition in a field of 40 women, and it was a pretty deep field of women.
Yeah.
It's a very level playing field, I think.
I think she surprised herself on a lot of the events. And what got me fired up was how, although she felt surprised at how she was stacking up, she felt like she wanted to do better. And so she's got a competitor's mindset in that way. She really wants to win, and she really wants to be in that top pack. And she's not an attention-seeking person. She's not someone that's in it for the wrong reasons, you know? So I'm really happy to have her as an athlete. I think, and the beauty is that she's so kind, and Ellie and her got along super well. You know, you never know when you coach two people of the same in the same competition, but they got on super well, and it was just really like the people that I'm lucky enough to coach are just really good people.
That's actually something that, I mean, you didn't have to go through at the games, but now you know, going into the season, you'll have to experience is like Pat and Ellie in 2021, one male, one female, they can help each other out. There's no headbutting there in any way.
Yeah.
But that is an interesting dynamic where, you know, if Ellie and Freya both make it to the games, that could be a thing that you'd have to deal with.
Yeah, and lucky for them, I've gone through that as a games athlete with the same coach as Katrin Davis Dutter. Not a lot of people know this.
This is another story.
So I know what that could feel like, and I am very hyper aware of that could feel like. And there is nothing I can do to mitigate that. I can't split myself in two. So being open and honest with me, how they feel with me, is crucial. And me being upfront with them about what I can do is also really important. So it can become a very sensitive situation, especially if we do end up training together, because, you know, people want to train together, but when people train together, other things happen, and it's not publicly known, or no one's going to post about this stuff, but you will feel jealousy. You will feel like you're not good enough because you get beat. You will feel like pressure, and you will want to win training. And so that has a lot of effect on both the athletes, even if they're very friendly and stuff like that. It's only normal. I mean, you're doing an individual sport and you want to win, and you're training with someone that you're going to eventually want to try and beat no matter what. And it's not an insult to anybody. It's not like Ellie's like, I'm going to beat Freya, and Freya's the same, but it is a sensitive situation, and you just have to be aware of it. Like, as a coach, you can't just expect them to just like respect each other. Like, they will always respect each other, but there will always be some kind of internal feeling of trying to compare and trying to win. So I'm aware of that, and the goal would be to get them training together so that they can work together and feed off of each other and learn from each other. But it doesn't get to the point where they've been together so long that they start to get used to each other, and then some things can develop that are less positive. So my plan is to get them training together, but not permanently. Like, I don't want to do the camp thing. Like, I
was going to bring that up.
Yeah, I don't think it's particularly constructive. It depends if it can be well done, but I don't think that it can be done permanently. Like, I was just reading about this in a book. I can't remember the book, but training camps is really the best option, where it's like you get the benefits of group training for a temporary amount of time, and then you get back into your own space, your own bubble, your own routine, and then you go back and forth. And that's how I used to train. And personally, like, when I was training, 1 week was more than enough to get like my feel of intensity and like checks, like just a little bit of a checkpoint kind of thing. But it's the most important thing for me is to make sure that they understand that I have limitations in time, and they understand that I have everyone's best interest at heart, but I can't separate myself into two. So the goal would be for the athletes to have a support system that is not myself. So Freya has an amazing coach with her. Her name is Kelsey. And she was with Freya over Wadapalooza, and they work extremely well together. And I was very, very happy to have that cushion, and Kelsey that Freya trusts 100% and is used to. So if Freya needs to have a moment of being her, like the ugly competitor, which everyone has, I've had, Ellie's had, Pat's had, Freya can have that moment with Kelsey and not feel like she can't have it with me. And me and Ellie have gotten a little bit closer, so she can have that moment with me, so just everyone needs to be covered, and just as long as that's planned out, usually things go pretty well.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And I got a chance to kind of see their dynamic as well. And you're right. Like there's different levels to these things, and everybody needs their support system.
Yeah, it's very important. Like when I was being coached by Ben Bergeron, he was my coach, but Fred was there with me. My boyfriend, Fred, was there with me every time. And he's the one that I could rely on for strategy because he knew me best. And like, I wasn't comfortable enough to have a moment with Ben. I had to have my moment with Fred because I couldn't be myself around Ben. I was too scared to let him down, too scared to kind of like look like the like crazy athlete. So the person I trusted the most to be myself was Fred. And so I know what that feels like. So it's important that athletes have that person that they can be themselves and have their meltdowns and feel comfortable and safe.
Yeah. And that's such a big thing. Like coaching athletes, you can tell the athletes that you're with who have that relaxation that can open up to you and be very private with you.
Yeah.
And the ones that can't. And there's a huge distinction there.
Yeah, and it's okay. Like I wouldn't want all of my athletes to be 100% open just to me.
Yeah.
Because that would reduce, like I would not be able to cover that kind of ground. But some people need it more than others, and it's just, if that's the case, then like if you're a coach listening to this and you feel like your athlete isn't being their 100% self, then that's just a little red flag. Maybe you're not demonstrating enough openness, or maybe that person needs to have someone really close to them to have like. So it's not an insult to anybody. It's just a question of comfort, and it all comes down to the athlete, and it should never be taken personally when that happens. When you feel like as a coach, maybe we want to have the trust of the athlete, but sometimes having the full trust could be a bad thing. Like you can get really hurt by, so those are all really sensitive situations. And the key to that is just honesty and setting the expectations with the people around you.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. We had a write-in question from a fan. Ooh. And it was, what do you think draws athletes to you as a coach? Did you say who or woo?
Say what?
Did you say who or woo for the write-in question?
Like, ooh, that's a good question. It's funny because I actually asked Ellie that not long ago. Okay. I asked her, like, why did she choose Deka, or why did you, like, because I was kind of trying to understand how Deka is seen in the competition scene and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so I asked her, and Ellie knows me as a coach through James Newbury.
Yep.
But what she didn't know is that Ellie's coach, like back in Australia, contacted me to coach her because he was a client of mine. But anyways, this is kind of side to this, not relevant. But she kind of just told me that Deka was just slightly different. Like it just looked like we had more of a athlete first perspective, and I think that stems from my experience as an athlete. And I have always wanted to have a coach that understood me as a person. And so I think, I don't know, I would have to say that what draws people to Deka or myself is, I want to say my experience, mm-hmm. Like I've been through the athlete thing
done
in
it all.
Sports, like I've done it. But I also feel like I have an approach that is maybe a little bit more human. But I don't like talking about myself like that. So I would like to say my experience.
So, you know who gave me that question?
And who's that?
It was Pat.
Oh, God.
And he said, make her talk about herself.
Look at Pat. Oh, excuse me.
It's all right. He gave me some good questions, so I really like that one. But he's like, yeah,
Well, I
make
don't
Michelle
know.
talk about herself.
Ask Pat that question. I think Pat and I, people don't know this, but my last year of competing was his first year at the games, and we trained together at my house. Like, he lived with us all summer, and we trained together.
Yeah.
And so we got to know each other really well, and we got along. And so I think what draw him to me was the fact that I was a little bit cynical, kind of like him.
Yeah.
You know?
You guys are very similar in that way.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good match. And I mean, you guys, that was his first games, and you guys have kind of stuck it out ever since then. So
yeah,
something's working. But it is interesting to see you and how you balance out your different athletes and their personalities. Like, I've seen, I've been with you a few times to see you work with these different athletes, and it is interesting, and it's nice to see that balance. And I mean, every partnership in that way is unique, but I think you're right about what you said. As a coach, is you have that experience, you've been around, you've done all the things: weightlifting, Olympic lifting, triathlon at a high level.
I don't know if
Did I
you would
say
call my
CrossFit?
triathlon high level.
Okay.
I've done one triathlon. Two.
I don't know if people would have fact checked that one or not, but you've been there and you've done it, and you've performed at a high level in the sport, and you've been around it to see. And I think that's the difference of some of the camps where they haven't done it themselves.
Yeah, and it's important to understand about that, though, is that, experience, just because someone doesn't have the experience doesn't mean that they're not good.
No.
I think where experience comes into play is really emotional. It's like knowing what a high intensity, high volume training cycle does to you personally. It's like understanding when people's understanding the difference in this is hard and this is too much in their tone of voice, because you know what that's like. Understanding that crying as a female athlete isn't being a baby. Like it's how women express disappointment, and it's how, and understanding how men express disappointment. That was a big learning experience for me, because I don't know if Pat's listening to this right now.
No,
but
he's not. I texted him earlier.
Okay. So Pat, after his first year of competing, I called my boyfriend. I was like, Pat's never going to want to talk to me again, because I didn't understand how Pat expressed some frustration throughout the process.
Mm-hmm.
And so understanding that women and men are different at expressing that, that's where I think the experience is really key. People also, like, creativity is probably one of my strongest suit as a coach. Like, I'm not the advantage of being the experienced coach, but not necessarily the academically educated coach. Yeah. I'm not afraid to kind of break systems,
Mm-hmm.
And I studied art, I studied design, I think creativity is part of my strong suit. So I do believe that I keep training fun and light. And I know, in the training week or program, I know when to give athletes a little break, so that's where I think the experience kind of plays. But then on the flip side, the experience can kind of hinder too, because I know what it's like. So if I have athletes coming to me and telling me that they're tired, I'm like, oh my God, you're right. I'm sorry, I'll pull it back, but I shouldn't do that, But sometimes I've caught myself kind of pulling it back, when in reality they should be sticking it out, they should be getting through it. So I have to be careful with that experience card.
Yeah, because what that 21-15-9 is going to feel like, and what that's going to do to you.
18, 15,
9.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. yeah. Fair.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting thing to have to balance as well, because I think you're right. Like, with some other sports, and that they've never been in that role, in that position directly, so they don't know that feeling.
Yeah, and to be fair, if you look at like Olympic sports, a lot of the Olympic coaches are ex-athletes and stuff like that. But I do think that experience is super important, but even more so self-awareness, awareness of like, if you don't have the experience, being aware of that and seeking out feedback is just as good as someone who's like, do you see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
as a
no, I got
coach,
you.
you just need to be self-aware, understanding where your shortcomings are as a coach and where you could be a problem in the equation of that process is super important. And that way you can ask feedback. And this is another thing, like coaching, asking for feedback from athletes. Like
Yeah.
in CrossFit, we coach adults. They're all adults.
Yep.
So asking them for feedback is an important part of your job. So, and that can mitigate the experience part. That can also help you, adjust when needed, right? So those are all important attributes to have. It's not just experience.
Yeah. And you actually do something cool with your Instagram from time to time, and that's you'll put a video up and ask for cues or what's going on with this video.
Yeah.
And I really like that. Now, when you read those and you read the comments and the answers in that, what are you thinking about building out, like some sort of feedback system? Are you thinking about giving a more direct answer to the end? Like, because some of the answers, like I'll go through and read some and I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I know what I'm talking about with some of these things. And I'm like, this is kind of the low hanging fruit answer. That's not the answer.
Well, I think that when I do those posts, really the initial goal of that post was just to kind of trigger coaching cues.
Yeah.
And in coaching, there's no such thing as like, no one has to win those videos.
No.
Right? Like, it's not about like, this is the answer, because I've had people ask me like, was I right? And the reality is that, like, aside from a couple of things where it's like, geez, I don't know where this person came from, but most of the time what I try to do is challenge people's vision on movement. And so everyone has different perspectives on a same movement. And some people will focus on lower body, some people will focus on upper body, and some people will focus on speed and other things like that. So to me, it was just kind of like to get people interacting in a coaching world and channel positive comments.
Yeah.
Right? Like I some of the answers I've gotten, I was like, oh shit, I never thought about that, and me, I kind of stopped coaching classes a long time ago, and I love coaching. So I was missing seeing movement and seeing and correcting people and teaching and progressions and stuff like that. So to me, it was just kind of a way to just get some comments and some coaching cues and some action on technique, because I love it.
Yeah.
But really, to me, it was also a way for, I'm glad you're telling me that you read the comments, because if you're a coach and you're reading those comments, it's a form of research. Like when you look at a comment and you're intrigued in a non-judgmental way, because that would be nice, right? Reading comments in a non-judgmental way. But when you can do that and you relook at the video, it kind of changes your perception of the movement. And so you'll look at different things, and coaches get caught up in a, like, we have this like key, right? When we think about the snatch, like my key in the snatch is the way people set up their arms. Like, I want to see a really relaxed arm, but a super big chest kind of thing. And so to me, when someone doesn't have that position, oh, that lift could miss. That's my go-to in the snatch,
Yeah.
But it's not the end all. So allowing myself to get different perspectives on my own personal lifts was just a fun way to kind of get people interacting. And I just like to trigger conversation about movement and technique. Like, what's amazing about Olympic weightlifting is that one movement is seen so many different ways, and it's just fascinating. So it was kind of my way of interacting, channeling positive comments, getting to see what coaches look at, try and educate coaches, maybe those who are newer and that are looking for, you know, hints and stuff like that, like quick, easy information. You can go on that and read a bunch of things and just have fun with that. And I have a ton of videos of me lifting in my past life. So I was like, well, just use that to kind of like, I don't know if people think I'm back on the wagon, but
that's what I wasn't sure of either. I was like, is this a new video or is this an
no,
old video?
my arms are not as as big as on the videos.
That was actually my first thought, because I knew at the time you'd posted, I knew you're doing a lot of triathlon, and I was like, this is a lot of weight, like for right now. Like,
I snatched 65 pounds for the first time, like this past summer, and it felt pretty freaking heavy. So I'm planning on getting back into it once the gyms open back up again. I'm planning on getting back into it, but don't expect any 200 snatches from me.
Maybe somebody's gonna motivate you and spark something in you.
Maybe. You can never say never. That's something CrossFit told me.
Exactly. One last thing is, so Ellie Turner is with you right now. She's training up in Montreal with you.
Yes.
Now that's something too, that she's your only real like in-person athlete right now, right? Correct?
She is. She's my only and first since like ever.
Okay. And so, I mean, not to speak for Ellie, but she's Australian.
Yes.
And she's in the Great White North right now in Montreal, accommodating or acclimating to what, -20 right now? What do you got out there?
Right now we're getting a little bit of a break. It's like -1 Celsius. But when she arrived from Miami, we had 2 weeks of like -20.
Yeah.
Like cold. And she's actually doing really well. So thank goodness.
Good.
I think she's a winter person at heart.
Had she seen snow before?
Yeah, she's been to Japan for a ski trip.
Okay.
And they have a lot of snow there. So she's seen snow before, but she's never lived through winter the way locals do. And if you don't have winter, you don't realize like the process it is to go outside, right? You put your boots on, you put your coat on, you put your scarf on, you put your mitts on, you put your hat on, and then you can go outside. And then you get into your car and you're like all stuffy and full of clothes. But then if it snowed, you have to clean the car. And then if you're really unlucky, if you're really unlucky, if the snow melted a little bit and then iced again, and then you have to scratch that off. And so there's a lot of little things that like she's kind of like, but I think the biggest problem initially was her skin, because the heating here is so dry.
Yeah.
So the skin gets really dry, and so that's like a part of winter that no one really thinks about. Apparently winter here is easier to train in because our gyms are heated. And in Australia, the gyms are not heated in the winter.
But okay, yeah, I guess it would be dependent on where she is too, but it's not that cold there.
Dude, it is 9 degrees. Like imagine training in a gym that's 9 degrees.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, it would just be at 9 degrees.
Yeah, and it doesn't heat. And I've been in Australia like in the winter-ish to go to regionals. I had an athlete out there once, and the house that we were in for the Airbnb for the competition was not heated. I was freezing.
Oh, so, I bet you did not expect that.
I did not. I had no idea. I was sleeping in t-shirts and like shorts, and I'm like, what is going on here? And then in the morning I asked Brandon, and I was like, what's going on? Like, it's so cold. And he's like, you have to take a heater. There's personal heaters to bring with you.
Oh.
But like actual heating isn't necessarily a thing.
Oh, I did not know this.
So it is like we give Australians a bad rap for winter, but it actually does get cold.
That's funny. I really had no idea. And I mean, I figured Ellie would have a harder time adjusting going up there, especially coming, from my Australia. It's the middle of summer there to Miami.
Is pretty nice. Like that's hard, but it's every day is getting lighter and lighter, like for longer. So that's good. And I took her skiing, like I cross country ski, and I took her skiing, and she loved it. So it was nice.
Perfect. She's
Yeah.
gonna be she's an honorary Canadian.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Commonwealth. She's basically my cousin.
Yeah, that's fair. Is the language barrier a thing there for her? Or is it not really a factor?
It depends where we are. So in Montreal, like in the city, usually she can get around speaking English to people. But when we go to areas where Deka is and like other areas on the North Shore, it's a little bit harder for her. But most people are kind enough to understand that she's not from around. But it is a factor, I think.
Yeah.
For her anyway, it's a factor. For me, it's like, oh, you'll just have to learn. Something to do.
Something to do. Yeah. When you're not training, you can learn this new language.
How cool is it that you go train with your coach and then you come back speaking a different language?
I mean, she's probably going to pick it up pretty quick. At least parts of it.
Ellie has a lot of strengths. Language is not one of them.
Okay. All right.
She has told me this herself. But I think she's better than she thinks. She just needs to practice.
Okay. That's fair. I think that's a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Last question here again from our write-in friend. He says the world of sports, is full of highs and lows.
Yeah.
What are your favorite highs during your career, both as an athlete and a coach? I don't know if he was looking for an answer here or not, but
my highs as an athlete for a coach. Wow. I have bad memory. I can't pinpoint one high. I mean, the most fun I ever had training was when Pat was there, like training wise.
Yeah.
But if I were to put a highlight, jeez, man. Actually, I have a picture in my office right now of a moment that was very dear. And it was 2014, and in that year we were only 2 to qualify for the games, and I was in the 3rd spot going into the last event, and it was kind of scary. And my sister was also competing that year, and so that last event, my sister and I were competing on the same floor, and so I ended up beating who I needed to beat to make it to the games. And so when my sister finished that event, right away she just crossed the line and looked for me, and we hugged it out, and that was a beautiful moment. Erica was my twin, competed, like she was pretty good at regionals, and the fact that she made the last heat on that event was really special. But I have so many beautiful highlights. I just can't pinpoint them. Like the one thing I regret is not appreciating more of the time that I've had, because the beautiful thing about being an athlete that people don't realize is the opportunity to develop yourself as a person. Like sport is a magnifying glass on the human condition. Like he says, the world of sports is highs and lows, and it's just like, if you can stay open-minded to those kind of experiences, it's just absolutely beautiful. And the lows, I mean, I can tell you the lows, like I think that's a survival mechanism, by the way. Like the humans only remember lows. We don't remember all the positive, we remember the lows.
I remember a lot of lows from when I was training and competing.
My lowest moment was in 2015, and it was the whole games experience. There were some good highs in that competition, but the lows were really low, like severe doubt of what I was doing and who I was and why I was doing things. I remember walking away from the Home Depot Center with Fred. We were alone. I just picked up my name placard, and it was the end of competition. And I had gone through a heat stroke in that competition. I couldn't eat. I didn't sleep. I was just a shell. I just remember, like, in tears, profound tears, telling Fred, like, I can't believe that I trained all year just to get beat up like that. Like, it wasn't even fun anymore. So that's the year I was like, I'm done. I'm done doing this. And so Fred told me to wait because I was still really emotional about everything. And it was a good thing he told me that, because he was right. But then 2016 was some of the most fun experiences, fun training moments. Training with Pat was good. Like, so I'd say personally as an athlete, but as a coach, I've had so many amazing moments. Like 2018 was a thrill. 2018 was a huge thrill. I had Pat and Laura on the second place podium.
Yeah.
Both of them. So that was like a thrill, but very intimidating as well. This past year was good, but I've learned that as a coach, you have to live the highs and lows in a very dulled way. You can't, I've had to kind of get myself a little bit out of those experiences, because those belong to the athletes. Like, and if I get too invested in that, then living that roller coaster of ups and downs, it just keeps me, it's too intense for me. So I kind of like pull myself back. But one of the nicest moments as a coach was being at Pat's wedding.
Yeah.
Like, that was really nice. Like, one of the nicest moments with Ellie was during WODProof when she had a really tough event there. It was just feeling comfortable enough as a coach to be there for her, to comfort her, but also to push her to be better. And that moment was like when all the pieces lined up. If I'd had that experience with Ellie 2 years ago, I wouldn't have reacted the same way. So that little moment of confidence that I had was just an aha moment. That night I went to bed thinking, like, I am getting used to these difficult situations, and I'm understanding myself and how I react to those difficult situations. And that moment I put myself aside and put my coaching hat on, and listened to her, told her how it all lined up in a professional way, and how she should move forward from it. So that was a very important moment in my coaching career that is very unsung and kind of quiet.
Yeah, that kind of stuff you'll remember, but nobody else has ever.
Yeah, but that
Nobody
was
else will ever experience.
It was very profound, because for her it was a really, really tough moment, and
Yeah.
I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very hard to kind of like not break down along with, and you have to play that role of strong person without overbearing and without being an idiot and saying like, you could overcome this, you're stronger than that, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So that was a good moment. It was a hard moment, but it was a proud moment.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but the one thing that just crossed my mind in this situation is you are one of the only female coaches that are coaching athletes at the level that you're coaching them. And, even from a programming standpoint, I can't think of another major programming, with high level or high profile athletes that's led by a female.
That is true. That is a scientific fact. I'm a girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. I try to, we can debate about this topic a long time, but yes, I can't escape that question and that comment. I can't escape it. It'll always be like that, because the world of sport and this isn't an insult to men, but it is a sport. It is a world that is dominated by men. And we see it a lot too with the Olympics, with like the differences, and especially team sports, not so much individual sports. I find that individual sports, like in terms of athletes, the females and the males are getting good amount of attention, but it's a hard, I don't know how I'm still working out how I feel about that comment. I don't want to let my sex play a role in why I'm different.
Yeah.
I don't want my sex to play a role in why I'm not solicited or why I am solicited. I do think that there are people out there that don't solicit my services because I'm a woman, and I don't think it's intentional. I think it is very ingrained in our way of seeing things in sport, in our habits.
Yeah.
And I know this because I've been through it. Like when I played water polo, I saw the camo team play with a female coach, and I remember thinking to myself, like, that must be weird. Like,
Yeah.
I've had that thought, so I know what it's like. But yes, I am there, and it is a fact, and it is what it is.
Okay.
You know?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're there, and you're telling one of the fittest men in the world how to do it.
Yeah, and
something's working.
and I've always been very honest about the limitation that brings. Like I've always told Pat that I still struggle to understand the differences, and especially strength movements between men and women.
Yeah.
And there are differences. Like women can hit their percentages better than men, or higher percentages. And like I forget that. And after 5 years of coaching Pat, I still forget that sometimes. So that's normal. Like I've only ever experienced CrossFit as an athlete through the female loading. So I'm only now beginning to get more accustomed to the male loading, the male realities, and the differences in the, so that's real. But Pat's always been good at kind of reminding me, like, hey, and like he doesn't take it personally, and we have a very professional relationship in that sense. But that is difficult, and I often get asked, like, what does it feel like to be the only female coach out there, or to be the female coach to Pat, or to be a female? And I've always resented that question, because it's like, man, I don't know what other male coaches get asked.
Yeah.
But it would be really nice that people ask me what I do, instead of, the body type that I have, like the fact that I have boobs or whatever. Like, so I can't, like, sometimes I see interviews with coaches, and I'm like, like I wonder if they would have asked me the same questions. And the other day I was talking to my female athletes at Wadapalooza, and I got a comment from someone that said I had nice hair. Like, dude, like both of my girls just finished in the top 10, and you tell me that I have nice hair? Like, would you have said that if I was a fucking guy? Excuse my language, but that gets me really angry.
Yeah, no.
So it's just kind of like a question that I know is important, because I understand that it is different.
Yeah.
But it's like I am more than just a girl.
Yeah. No, I know it's an interesting topic to talk about, because I know that there's a lot of, I don't want to say like side eye, but people look at it differently.
Yeah. And the reality is, Justin, that it is different. I do have a different perspective. I'm a woman, and so I have a different perspective than a man's. But I am also Michele, so I have a different perspective than Justin. I am a Canadian, so I have a different perspective than an American.
Yeah.
And so that's, that's what I mean by it is what it is. I'm a girl. I have and there are strengths about being a woman, and there are weaknesses about being a woman. And I can understand why more women aren't doing coaching. You have to be very invested, and it is hard. Like, it is emotionally difficult. And I have not known one woman that doesn't just full on get her emotional self involved in her work when that person is passionate.
Yeah.
My sisters are like that. My mother is like that. A lot of business female owners are all in. And so being all in as a coach is hard. Like, my first couple of years was really hard emotionally. And so I kept asking myself, like, how come people do this as a job? It's just, I go to bed at night, like I wake up at night because my athletes didn't do well. I have problems personally with an athlete. I wake up at night, and like how do people do this? And one of the strengths, I guess, that men may have that women don't, is to kind of separate themselves from a situation, and they don't take it as personally as women. But I think that that's also part of my strength, because I'm fully invested in getting my athletes ready, and I care about them on a very personal level. So is that because I'm a woman, or is that because I'm Michele? Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
No, I mean, I've seen you mid competition and how like focused and invested you seem at all times. And that's like, I can see it on your face sometimes.
Yeah.
And I can see when you're
Apparently
relaxed.
very expressive.
And I know it's like you're in the zone right there, or you're like relaxed, and it's a very, I mean, and this could be all of us, but when you say you're all in, like, it's very true that I can see it. Like it's like an emotional experience.
Yeah. But I do want women to be unafraid of that kind of responsibility, because it's not just because you're a woman that you're scared to be responsible for someone's journey. Like when Patrick asked me to coach him in 2016, 2017, I had severe fear of being responsible for his regression. That's something I think all coaches go through. And I think women in a male dominated area would probably go through that in a very intense way. And if there's a girl listening, a woman listening right now, and that wants to coach, Jesus, sorry. They're clearing the streets of snow. And
I thought it sounded like a clarinet or something.
Well, I thought so too, but it's like a bulldozer. So if you're a female coach out there, just, man, like being nervous about having that kind of responsibility and getting that imposter syndrome and thinking that you're not ready for that kind of investment, like everyone. And I have no doubt that if, I don't know, like you were to coach Patrick for next year's season, you would feel the same. Or Ben or Justin Kotler, or all of those coaches probably feel some level of fear when they have the responsibility of a high level athlete like that. So being a woman doesn't mean that you're the only one that feels that. So it's a very intimidating process, but honestly, I do think that we need to see more women. And if there's a reason that I'm sticking to my guns and staying in this field, there is a big reason for it, because I can't let the boys have all the fun. I have to be there.
Hey, perfect. And we're better for it.
Thank you.
On that note, thank you so much. This is super insightful. And I think that there's so many golden nuggets in this
thank you.
I hope people listen.
Oh, well, it was great conversation. Thank you so much for having me, Justin.
So before we go, if everybody's looking for you, Michele Letendre.
Yeah.
On Instagram, and then Deka Comp on Instagram as well.
Yes. And you can go on our website too, but those are the two major places that you can join me.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. And looking forward to seeing how the season goes.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Take care, guys. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hit that like button and subscribe down below for more content coming soon from WODProof.